So I normally wear hats for these types of videos just because I enjoy wearing these, but I feel like out of all the attire I'm wearing, this is kind of the most unfitting just because, well, I was trying to wear something a bit more serious, but I don't have any, like, screaming majorly depressive gear or anything in my closet related to that, which would be really fitting for this subject matter, but alas, I don't have it. So we're just gonna talk about whatever we want to as is. Well, okay, technically we are kind of narrowing the gap into Silent Hill, and I just wanted to make this video because I was kind of recollecting about this, and if some of you don't know, I love the Silent Hill games. Now, Silent Hill 1 and 2, I absolutely love those ones, and those are the ones I zero in on the most, and the other ones are all definitely good, and there's some bad ones, don't get me wrong, but I just have such an insatiable love for those two games, and especially this year since I've replayed them a few times, I want to talk about them as well too. So hopefully if you're a Silent Hill fan, you can chime in with this, and if you're not a Silent Hill fan, well, forewarning you in case the warning at the beginning of the video wasn't big enough and clear enough, this is going to have major spoilers as I'm talking, so just, you can proceed if you want to, but just be warned, you're probably gonna have things spoiled. So what the hell attracted me to this game originally? Well, I didn't even play the first one, I actually played Silent Hill 2 originally, and it was something that my mom ended up renting for me when I was 8 or 9 when I got my Xbox, and to this day, Mom, I have no idea why you thought that game was suitable for a child, I'll be honest. Now, I didn't get very far because at the time I didn't really know how to play games, as that was my first game system. But I just remember even the first cutscene, and in my top 5 favorite games of all time, and spoiler, you know what one of them is now, so you have to guess the other 4 in case you do or don't know. But Silent Hill 2 ranked up there as one of my favorite ones, and in there I said even the beginning cutscene, I remember just as an 8 or 9-year-old child just looking at that and being like, whoa, I'm about to get into something heavy here. So pretty much from what I remember, well, I don't remember too much of it, I just remember the first cutscene and then going through the woods, and I think I met Angela, and I don't remember too much else from that. I thought it was boring, to be honest. I was in this city, it was kind of creepy, it was full of fog, I couldn't see that much, so I kind of just shelved it. And it was years later, I ended up getting Silent Hill on the original PlayStation, and I actually played through more of that. And that game terrified me as a kid. Like, it terrified me so much, I ended up selling it off, which was not a good idea, because then it appreciated in value, and I ended up rebuying it later on, and this year I ended up playing through it a few times, and my god, I'll say this, I'm not gonna sit here on a soapbox and tell people the first Silent Hill is a masterpiece, because it's not. It definitely has its flaws. I mean, there's a whole lot, and here's the thing with the Silent Hill games, if you only play them and that's it, you're not really gonna know much of the lore. You're not gonna know much of the story. Now, is there a story there? Yes. Is it like as paper thin as Dark Souls? No, it's not. Like, there's cutscenes, there's storyline, there's things that you can read in there, but the thing is, there is so much heavy symbolism tied to everything in the games as well, too, and this is especially prevalent with the first Silent Hill, which just broke so much ground. And the big thing I take away from this game, especially, is the way Silent Hill was made. It was made by Team Silent. Team Silent did the first Silent Hill games, and while as people came and went on the team, the first one was the original Team Silent. Team Silent was made up of the rejects and the people who were just outcasts at Konami. You see, these people were working on a whole bunch of different projects, and Konami was like, hey, new people that suck on these projects, you're gonna get thrown onto this team, make something. And they ended up making Silent Hill. And it just shows at this point, like back in the late 90s, a company like Konami was willing to take these big, giant strides and steps, and now we're dealing with the same company that's putting all their money into pachinko machines and effectively kind of castrated Metal Gear Solid 5 in a way, completely teased and then canceled a new Silent Hill reboot, and Guillermo del Toro, they made him just completely abandoned game development. Completely. After he had his trilogy of games canceled, I don't remember, I think they were called Insane, they got canceled because THQ went under, and then all of a sudden, he works on Silent Hills, and that gets canceled completely, and Kojima ends up leaving. He even said, I will never work on a video game. I have tried it twice, it has failed both times, but this past experience with Konami, never working on a game again. As you can see, I get kind of flustered about it, because I have a really deep-rooted appreciation for the series. But no, the first Silent Hill, as I said, although I love it, it definitely has its flaws. I mean, first off, it was never a pretty looking game. Even at that point, it wasn't that good. The storyline on it, you know, as I said, still, you kind of have to piece together. You need to read a few things here and there. It's not spoon-fed to you, which you can either like or dislike. And then on top of all that as well, too, there's parts of it that have aged well and others not so much. Now, I know a lot of people have said notoriously that the game looked so bad that it was terrifying, which it kind of is, not gonna lie. But the performance as well too is another thing that nobody's really touched up on. Now, I notice this more because I game on PC as well, so I notice frame rates and all that. And before anyone says, oh Mario, you shouldn't be ragging on the frame rate, listen, what I'm about to say, right? Silent Hill does not have a good constant frame rate at all. It dips all the time, but that actually added to the atmosphere, believe it or not. Because do you know how terrifying it is when you're running through Silent Hill and there's all these enemies that are attacking you and you can hear them from every single direction and you're trying to run away from them, they're coming at you and you're just trying to dodge them and you're running at like 12 frames a second. I am not kidding. I don't mean any sarcasm by that. It's like you're going through this in slow motion and it's even more terrifying, and it's just combined with the music and the sounds of this series just absolutely blow me away. And then it just adds on to that, and it's definitely play through the first one. I'd recommend that. Definitely play through it if you haven't. But this really paved the way, of course. It set the ground for all the other sequels as well too. And then I remember we had the movie, which I don't really want to talk about. I would just say this. They ended up changing the little girl. They also ended up changing the main character. It's no longer Harry, because the director ended up saying, I was writing this story and I figured out it would be a mother's role. No, it wasn't. It was the father was fine in there. And the reason why I'm also a bit sour about that as well too is because I like Harry Mason as a character. I like him as a character quite a bit. And they axed him for whatever reason, but the movie still did some things right. Like, the intro was very almost picture perfect to the intro of the first game. Why did they have to add Pyramid Head? This kind of going to start going into Silent Hill 2, but Pyramid Head is a character in Silent Hill 2 that is supposed to represent James Sunderland's suffering and is supposed to punish him, but he's also a really cool character. Don't get me wrong, he's a really cool character. But instead of leaving him in the story that makes sense, they pick him up and they say, Pyramid Head's a really cool character. Let's drop him in this movie. Let's drop him in this movie. Let's drop him in all the other sequels that we could think of that are run by American companies that are not at all the original Team Silent. Why? Because he's a cool character, while it's not at all giving a shit about his original origins or why he was even in Silent Hill 2 to begin with. Now, even leading into that, aside from that rant there, I mean, Silent Hill 2 is excellent. It's one of my all-time favorite games, of course, as I've said before, and there hasn't been any other survival horror game like it in the past. I don't know how long, to be honest. In fact, I'll put it like this, kind of just skipping to the end. You play this game, and for hours on end, you're terrified, and you don't know what's gonna happen, and it's just gnawing at your brain. And then you beat the game, and you know what happens? You feel. You feel just raw emotion and pure sadness. And it's just how many horror games make you feel sad at the end? I can't think of any others aside from Silent Hill 2. They mastered that at the very end, so like kind of going back, we're gonna have to do a 360. At the beginning of the game, you're called to Silent Hill, different character, different type of Silent Hill technically, because, you know, it represents different types of person suffering, I guess you can say. But you're called there because your dead wife, who passed away 3 years ago, ended up writing you a letter and you got it in the mail, and she said, I'll be waiting there in our special place, which is supposed to be Silent Hill, and you're figuring out what's going on. Well, you don't get all the letter at the beginning of the game because that'd be way too easy. You get the entire letter at the end of the game, and it is heartbreaking to the point where the voice actress, you can hear her choking back tears, trying not to cry. And apparently even in development, they said that after she finished that, she just cried for like 30 minutes. It's like you go through that and it's like, yeah, I feel that. I totally believe that. Silent Hill 2 is something else, man. Still, after all these years, it holds up. And it holds up in so many other ways too, from the first point where it grips you, from the very beginning where, you know, you see the cutscene, and it was remarkable at the time, but you see the first cutscene, and then when you take control of your character, you still kind of think there's a cutscene going on. But no, that's the actual game itself. The odd cast of characters that you meet, the places that you go to, the whole new different types of characters that are enemies in this game as opposed to Silent Hill 1, where Silent Hill 1 they're demon, freakish, hellish monsters, and here they're messed up people and mannequins, and they make the most godforsaken noises. One of the worst things too is the better setup you have, the more terrifying this is. Now, my main setup that I play with in my living room, I have my TV there, and then I have a surround sound system. And when I played through Silent Hill 2 again recently, I'd never played on this. I screamed a few times. Especially because this game messes with you when it comes to the audio. The audio is just on point again when it comes to soundtrack, the sound effects, and everything. But the reason why it messed with me is because it sounded like there were enemies crawling up my hallway. That's a bit terrifying when you're playing the game at 10 or 11 at night in the dark, and I probably shouldn't be doing that. Why do I do this to myself? Anyways, you go through this game as this character who has this obvious suffering going on. You don't know if he's crazy or not because he's looking for his wife, which even he can tell is like, this is crazy, but I'm doing it for some reason and I just don't care why. And he's dealing with different people that have their own issues as well too, where Angela has a deep-rooted past of it deals with some heavy stuff. It deals with incestual relations. It deals with rape. It deals with bullying. It deals with some really serious psychotic stuff there. I mean, some people might be laughing a bit at that, but you see these characters, you see how messed up they are, and it's truly psychotic. So you go through this game, you find out what happened to your wife, it leaves your jaw on the floor, and then you decide to beat the game, and guess what? The most terrifying thing about this game? The entirety of what you played, when you were at your wit's end for hours on end, was all being controlled by a dog. A dog! A fucking dog just controlled all of the nightmares that you were going through for the past few hours. Actually, that ending is technically not canon, but that is a real ending, and that is one of my favorite endings because it's so great. So great. You go through Silent Hill 2 and everything's controlled by a dog. But as I said, that's not the actual ending. The first time you go through, there's at least 4 different endings you can get, and it depends on all these little actions and mannerisms that you do and take and everything, and it is truly an experience. It's truly an experience. And if I'm being kind of a bit detailed here and kind of general over there, it's because you really have to form your own opinion of Silent Hill. And you have to figure out what certain things mean or what they might mean to you or what you think they mean. Because again, there's so much symbolism that is either given to you or kind of just hidden behind this, and even it is broken down into the characters themselves, the names they have, and every little meticulous detail in here was just crafted with love from the developers that you could see was just so remarkably well done. On top of that, one thing I learned very early on playing video games that are rated M as a child, if you get a game and you boot it up and it has a warning screen like this, you're in for a good time. There are still great games even now in 2016 going into 2017. And think about it, I probably should have done this video. This would have been a perfect video to do like in October, but I wasn't thinking of doing this in October. I thought of doing it with food and turkey for some reason, which is kind of screwed up because I don't want to eat anything that it comes from Silent Hill. And those are kind of my off-the-dome thoughts of the first 2 Silent Hill games. If you've played them, let me know what you think of them, and if you haven't played them, I would highly recommend checking them out, because at least Silent Hill 1, I still think it's good. Might take you a bit to get into, but it's good. But Silent Hill 2, absolute masterpiece. Even to this day, it's so good in so many ways. Anyways, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. Let me know what you all thought of this, and if you enjoyed this video, a like would be appreciated. If you think Silent Hill is just the worst thing, and it's horrible and disgusting, which it kind of is, a dislike is okay too. Pyramid Head might come for you, though.
I swear that I was shy for a century. From the outside peeking in, I can smell